back to the Young Stars Classic here in Penticton, the South Okanagan Event Center. It is the Calgary Flames and Edmonton Oilers tied 1-1 after one as we welcome in our first intermission guest, Ray Edwards, Director of Player Development for the Calgary Flames. And Ray, maybe just first get your thoughts on what we've seen here so far through 20 minutes.
No, I think it's a little better every game. You hope to improve a little bit. I think, we talked about getting to the inside of the game a little bit better tonight. I think our guys are doing that. First goal is a perfect example of getting pucks and bodies to the net, and did a nice job getting one there.
Yeah, Lucas Yona causing all kinds of trouble there.
Yeah.
What about the opportunity? I mean, the Young Stars Classic, we talked about this. It's the first time in 4 years the Calgary Flames have been here. But for a group of young prospects or even guys who have a little bit of pro experience, how valuable is it to have these 3 games here this week?
Well, I think it's great because, number one, the environment is excellent. You've got the Battle of Alberta for us, so them being able to experience that is nice, and you can't put a price on that experience for them. It's if you've never been part of it, you don't know what it's like. I remember my first one here, and I didn't realize the intensity that would have in a preseason game in a rookie tournament. So it's pretty exciting for them. But all of them, I think it's really important to get their not to dip their toe in the water here and to get going and to understand that from this time on they're being evaluated every time they're on the ice. And some of these camps, they don't last very long, and it's important for them to get going early and show these guys what they got.
Well, and it's interesting you mention that because we've seen some conversations and over the years, some of the fisticuffs that have come from it, but that competitiveness that you talked about. I mean, as a staff, that's got to be something that you want to see. You want to see that right from the start, the aggressiveness and competitiveness.
Well, I think the way we want to play, and that's with a high level of competitiveness. So sometimes that the fisticuffs and those things come from that, but you don't see it a lot these days. But back in the day, it certainly was there. But what we want to see is our guys working and competing and getting into tough areas and winning puck battles and hanging on to pucks and making plays.
And obviously from a management staff and obviously player development, a useful tool for you guys as well. Maybe just give some background on the opportunity to watch some guys, maybe, scouts, obviously an opportunity to see players that they had a hand in drafting, but then development-wise, maybe a little progress report on where guys are at.
Yeah, so, obviously every player out there, we've had a hand in. When we draft them, we put a development plan together for each and every one of them. Our staff is here with us. We've got a pretty big staff coming from, on-ice help to skating help to mental performance help. So, it's nice to get everybody together and then see sort of the fruits of the labors. Like these kids, a lot of them spent a lot of time in Calgary over the summer. Some of them have been with us 1 year. Some have been with us 2 or 3 years. So it's really good to see sort of all the work they've put in. And, it's really good for the scouts. Most of them are here, all the amateur guys. So these guys have drafted these kids, and now they get to see sort of what's happened over the last couple of years with them.
Well, and in some ways, just the start of the process. As you talked about, it kind of continues on throughout the season, but visits and making sure that, you're staying in touch and trying to hit those milestones that you've kind of laid out for them.
Yeah, so, Marty and I are the ones that get out in the field, and we're, it's like we have our own team, but we're not together.
Right.
So, we've got, I think, 13 or 14 kids spread out over North America and Europe. So it's our job to get out and make sure that they're doing what they have to do, stay in touch with their coaches and their strength and conditioning people. And like I said, we have a plan for each kid, and it's up to us to execute that plan.
What's it like, because there's been a number of guys that come through the system, and it's the junior ranks and eventually maybe some pro hockey time, but eventually, as we've seen through the organization, guys that have now found their way in the National Hockey League, and they all have kind of a hand in that. I'd imagine there's a sense of pride in that as well, because that's what it's all about, is developing players that can play at the highest level.
It's no different than when I coached in the American League. When you see a kid, grow and then find his way to the National Hockey League, that's a pretty rewarding time. And it was nice for me when I first came in. We had guys like Rasmus and Mangiapane and Dubé, and then a couple of years ago when I was back in Calgary, it was nice to be able to get to coach him actually in the NHL. So to see those guys make that step, and we've got some guys here that will push, and these are big years for them. So they've got lots of work to do, and this is just the start for them here. This is the first couple of days at camp, and they've got to find a way to make their way to the next phase.
Maybe just one last one for you. You talk about guys that'll push, and Jacob Pelletier is a name that comes to mind, but second-year pro, obviously coming off a great rookie season in the American Hockey League. What does that evolution look like for a guy, and is it about just kind of making decisions hard for him?
I think it's all about learning the game and learning how he can have his success. He's a very competitive guy. He's got to find a way to win pucks against bigger, stronger players. he wants to get into the mix. He wants to be in the guts of the game.
Right.
And that's what he was really successful at the American League level, but he's got to find a way to do that at the NHL level. And sometimes that takes time. You look at a guy like Andrew Mangiapane, you know, he was in Stockton for 2 or 3 years and finally found his way. Rasmus Anderson, same thing. So sometimes with these guys, it just takes a little bit of time, and that's okay.
Appreciate the time. Thanks for stopping by. Ray Edwards, Director of Player Development for the Calgary Flames, and keen eye on what's happening here on the ice as the Oilers and Flames tied 1-1 after one. We'll be back with the second period, but first a look at the Edmonton Oilers and their summer hockey school.